stock prices will go down, most probably. If you would, and then you would prefer to hold the government bond, for instance. Or if you think, well, they start inflating the system, then you would be better with a stock rather than a bond, right? So the question where the system is heading to is key: inflation or deflation. And I would like to make you aware of two extreme scenarios. I already touched upon the developments in the United States of America called the Great Depression. The stock market reached its high in October 1929 and then collapsed. But not only the stock market collapsed, economic activity collapsed as well. And on this chart shows the output per person from 1928 to, I think it's 1938 in various countries. And just to give you a feel, in, for instance, Canada, output per person fell by more than 40%. 40%. For instance, in 2008, the German economy contracted by 5%. Back then, it went down by 40%. That's a big difference. And the reason was the boom collapsed. The Federal Reserve didn't issue new money or cut interest rates to stimulate the economy. The boom fell into bust. That's the one extreme. The other extreme is the experience in the Weimar Republic. You know what the Weimar Republic was? Yes. After World War I, the Germans put an end to the emperor regime. They installed social democratic socialism. That was the Weimar Republic. And the new democracy didn't want the economy to collapse. We have to think about the situation in 1918 when the war ended. Firms were producing guns and war stuff, and the most likely development would have been a contraction of the German economy, because moving from a wartime economy into, let's say, peacetime economy would have required an adjustment of the economic situation on the landscape. But the new German government didn't want a recession. What did they do? They started printing money. They told the Reichsbank to issue more paper money. And with this paper money, they handed out subsidies to unprofitable companies. So they succeeded in keeping unemployment to below 2%. And they kept on going with issuing more money. And where does that lead to? If you... Sorry?
Lower buying power.
Yeah, or inflation, right? Inflation went up to 100% per year, 200% per year, 400, 500, 1,000% per year. And then at the end of 1922, the Belgian and French troops occupied the Ruhrgebiet, that's the industrial heartland of Germany. And the German government said, well, now we can go for passive resistance. Workers, civil servants, go home. Don't let the French and the Belgian get our goods and services. Go home, don't work, we pay for you. And the Reichsbank printed new money for paying loans, wages. And then the whole thing came out of control. Hyperinflation set in. As you can see, this is in logarithms, the development of the money supply and prices. And towards the end of November 1923, hyperinflation was that bad that the former currency, the Reichsmark, was destroyed as money. No one would use Reichsmark anymore. The Reichsmark had to be replaced by a new currency. The thing was, the Germans inflated, hyperinflated, then the thing collapsed, and then there was the Great Depression, the bust. So the Americans went from boom into bust. The Germans went from boom into hyperinflation and then into bust. And that might explain why Mises pointed out that the boom will necessarily end in a bust. That was the experience he had in mind when he formulated this development. Now, just to conclude, I as an economist, I try to understand what's going on in the world, what people think would be good and advisable economic policy, and I have a sense that printing new money is considered the policy of the least evil in the United States, but also in the euro area, and also in Japan, and sooner or later also in China. And in 2002, the former Fed governor, Ben Bernanke, said the following, quote, "The US government has a technology called a printing press that allows it to produce as many US dollars as it wishes at essentially no cost. We conclude that under a paper money system, a determined government can always generate higher spending and hence positive inflation." Now, if you, as a policymaker, or you as voters, wouldn't want to have deflation or recession as a result of the preceding boom, then you have to continue printing out new money. And to my understanding, this is basically the general idea of getting central banks involved in international financial markets to suppress interest rates, to keep banks afloat, to avoid government defaults, not only in the US, but on a worldwide scheme. And to give you some more evidence, I would like to take a look at this chart. What you see is 2005. This is March 2014. The orange line is the so-called credit default swap spread. You know what that is? CDS is the abbreviation. It's an insurance. It's an insurance. You as a bondholder, you can insure yourself against the default of the bond. For instance, buy a bond issued by the Bank of America. You can buy an insurance. Now, what does it mean if the price of the insurance goes up? The default risk is rising, right? If people think it's becoming more likely that the Bank of America can no longer repay its debt, then the default probability goes up. And so the price you have to pay for insurance goes up. Okay? Very simple. Look, what happened in 2008 was, in 2008, the price for CDS went up for all banks in the world. And then the Federal Reserve started printing up new money for keeping banks afloat. That worked. The prices came down. But then concerns about defaults reappeared, so the Federal Reserve printed more. And around here in 2012, people understood, okay, there won't be any defaults of major commercial or investment banks in international financial markets. And as a result, the CDS spreads are coming down. Central banks are printing up money for preventing banks from defaults. There. And as you can see, you always need an interpretation, you always need a theory for making sense of a certain data set. This is also a piece of evidence. Before you look at this chart, I just want to make you aware that, for instance, banks in the euro area they not only issue euro-denominated bonds, they also issue dollar-denominated bonds. Okay? Why is that? Because German banks do a lot of business in the United States of America. And for extending loans in the United States, they need loans in dollar. Now, a bank can obtain dollars in two ways. It can issue a dollar-denominated bond. Okay? It can also issue a euro-denominated bond, take the euro, switch it into dollar, and through the forward transaction, switch the dollar back into euro. And if you have efficient financial markets, those transactions should be equal in terms of funding costs. And this graph shows you the difference between the two funding transactions. In 2008, what is Commerzbank? Do you know Commerzbank? Eisenbank, so no one would lend them any dollars anymore. You know, they needed dollars desperately. No one was there to lend them. And so the central banks came and said, okay, the first was the United States, was the Federal Reserve Bank. The Fed said, we lend all banks around the world US dollars in unlimited amounts. And then financial markets realized, okay, there won't be defaults of banks which have funding problems in dollar, because the funding problems will disappear. And so the spreads went back up. The problem reappeared in 2012. And the central banks around the world reacted. They put into place so-called liquidity swap agreements. That means they lent money, newly created money, unlimited amounts to each other if needed. For instance, the Canadian Central Bank can obtain Swiss franc from the Swiss National Bank in unlimited amounts. Should Canadian Commercial Bank need Swiss money? The People's Bank of China can obtain unlimited amounts of euro. And by having implemented these so-called liquidity swap agreements, the default risk has been taken out of the markets in foreign currencies. Okay? That might be another piece of evidence why, the whole system appears to be moving towards a more inflationary result. This is another piece of evidence. You may be wondering why interest rates are so low. Do you know where the 10-year Bund yield trades at the moment for German government bonds? 10 years? What? It's internationally traded. Where is it? 8%? No. Higher or lower?
To minus.
Sorry?
Minus.
Minus 2. Well, the nominal yield. The nominal yield is as 1.5%. If you lend the Federal Republic of Germany your money for 10 years, you get 1.5%. Great. For the German government, not for you. And the reason is central banks have started intervening in the pricing of the bond market. They suppress interest rates as they have done in the Second World War. And this is what you would see here. This graph shows you from 1940 until 1954 the 10-year interest rate. 10-year interest rate, can you see? And the orange line is the consumer price inflation. What the Americans did was, during World War II, they financed their war outlays through issuing bonds. And to prevent the growing supply of bonds from raising interest rates, they fixed bond prices. They fixed bond prices in the market. They said, if the bond price falls to below 100, we are there and buy the bond for 100. That was a minimum price for bonds. And if you fix the bond price, you fix the interest rate. So they kept interest rates at 2.5%, bought more bonds, paid the purchase of this bond by issuing more money. What happened? Inflation went up. But interest rates didn't go up. So the result was inflation was higher than the interest rate. What does it imply? A negative interest rate in real terms. So you get 2.5% and inflation is 10%. Is it a good deal? It's not a good deal, right? Because you lose money in real terms. the fixed bond prices from 1942 until 1951, and in that period, the purchasing power of the US dollar went down by more than 40%. That means you, as an investor, could buy one candle for $1 in 1942. And in 1951, when the Americans stopped with this kind of policy, you got 0.6 apples for $1. It's dramatic, isn't it? They devalued the money through this kind of operation. And when you look the world over, it's not, it's not a natural development that interest rates are so low. But it is the result of a market manipulation on the part of central banks. So last chart. Fiat money, credit money, paper money. Monetary history is full of experiments with paper money. And I think it's fair to say that all of them have gone wrong. Some of these experiments have gone terribly wrong. But one thing is clear. The paper money system is not a natural monetary order. It has great problems. And sooner or later, a currency reform, in one way or the other, will be required. And just to give you an idea how that might look like, the Chinese in 2009, the former central bank governor, said the following, quote, "The desirable goal of reforming the international monetary system is to create an international reserve currency that is disconnected from individual nations and is able to remain stable in the long run, thus removing the inherent deficiencies caused by using credit-based national currencies."
Communists.
Yeah. Even they understand, that paper money is not a good, it is not a good, economically speaking and ethically speaking, monetary order. I would love to have some debate with you and discussion to see what you think of what I just presented. At the end of my talk, some recommendations. There are great books out there. You can download them for free. They're available on the internet. One is, for instance, it's one of my favorites, The Mystery of Banking is called. Is it okay if I recommend it? The Mystery of Banking, written by Mario Rothbard. He was in the Privatseminar in the United States with Ludwig von Mises. Also, Mises' book, The Theory of Money and Credit. And this one may also attract your attention. That is Friedrich August von Hayek's book from 1976, Denationalization of Money, where he presented an idea to privatize money, to close down central banks. It's a fantastic read. And the idea is so simple that most people are presumably ashamed to believe that this could work. Just to privatize money, to let the market decide what people would love to hold as money, and to open up a free competition of currencies, let the market decide through competition what currency, what kind of money people would like to hold. Thank you very much for your attention.